In this video on kinematics, we work our way through part 2 of displacement and distance integrals. And in this video, our focus will be to learn about the distance integral, which will allow us to calculate the distance traveled by a particle between two moments or two instants in time. Now, to get us started, let me quickly remind us of the context or setup that we had seen in part 1, in which we had learnt about the displacement integral that I've boxed in the upper right-hand corner here. Remember, we had considered a flat surface like a table or the ground, with an origin here at 0, and we were dealing with a particle illustrated right here, which initially, so at time equals to 0, was 1 meter to the right of 0. Then, once the timer started, the particle started moving to the right, and after 1 second it was 3 meters away from 0, and after 2 seconds the particle was 5 meters to the right from 0. Following that, the particle started moving back to the left, and after 3 seconds it was back at 3 meters to the right of 0, and after 4 seconds it was back where it started at 1 meter to the right of 0. And we had said that in exam questions it's unlikely that we'd be given an illustration like this one, and instead we'd be given the velocity function that we see here. And so now, to understand how distance integrals work, here comes the question. We need to find the distance traveled from t equals to 1 seconds to t equals to 3 seconds. In other words, the distance this particle traveled between 1 second and 3 seconds. Okay, well, let me start by stating the formula we'll be using. Here it is. The distance traveled, so I'll just say distance, between two instants in time, say t1 and t2, so I'll write distance for t between t1 and t2, is equal to the definite integral from t1 to t2 of the absolute value of the velocity function. And I'll go ahead and box that result. There we go. Do make a note of this. This will give us the distance traveled. Careful, although this may look similar to what we have above here and what we looked into in part 1, the absolute value that we have here makes a big difference. And so let me spend a couple of minutes to illustrate how all of this works and how this formula distinguishes itself from the displacement integral formula we had seen previously. Let me start by making a sketch of the velocity function we have here. So if I draw some axes, there we go, something looking like this. I'll say this is t for time in seconds, and the vertical axis will be v of t, so for velocity. Now, this velocity function is clearly a sine curve, and its amplitude is pi, so we'll be oscillating between pi and negative pi. And we had also seen previously that this function's period, capital T, would be 4. Indeed, the period would be equal to 2 pi divided by the number we have here, so divided by pi over 2, which by all means check leads to 4. So the full sine curve does one cycle every 4 seconds. There we go. And now to quickly sketch the sine curve, I go halfway across the period right here, so that would be 2 seconds, and then I split each of these two halves in 2. So that would be 1 second here and 3 seconds there. Now, remembering that the sine curve starts at 0 and then follows the triangular pattern that I'm drawing right now, we can quickly sketch it. And so this velocity function looks something like this. There we go. Now, a quick reminder of what the displacement integral would give us if we used it between t equals to 1 and t equals to 3. Well, let's see. That would correspond to the area enclosed by the curve and the t-axis from 1 to 2, as well as from 2 to 3. So that would be this area right here that I'm hatching right now, as well as this area here. And now the reason why this displacement integral formula won't lead to the distance traveled by the particle here can be explained by the fact that this green area, well, that could be thought of as a positive area, which tells us that between 1 and 2 seconds, the particle we had was moving towards the right, and the amount by which it moved will be equal to this green area. On the other hand, the area that we have underneath the t-axis, well, that would be considered as a negative area. And it's negative because the particle would be moving towards the left. And the amount by which it moves towards the left would be equal to this area. And hopefully you can appreciate that in terms of magnitude or size, these two hatched areas are equal. But of course, because this one's positive and this one's negative, the fact that these two areas are equal in size leads to the integral from 1 to 3 of our velocity function to being equal to 0. And that's the result we'd get from our displacement integral formula right here. On the other hand, with the new distance formula we boxed here, if we were to plot the function absolute value of v of t, here's what it would look like. And I'll try and draw that directly underneath the previous one. There we go. So I'll quickly draw the axes like so. And again, we'd have pi, and I'll draw negative pi right there. I'll say that 4 seconds is here, so that 2 seconds would be there, 1 second is here, and 3 seconds is there. Now, given this is the curve of v of t, the curve we'd get when considering the absolute value of v of t would be identical to this one anytime this curve is above the horizontal axis. So here from t equals 0 to t equals to 2, the absolute value of v of t will be exactly the same as this one. So at least in that part, I can follow the regular triangular pattern that we started off with. And so we'll have the same curve looking like this. On the other hand, as soon as the curve passes underneath the horizontal axis, so this part here, what the absolute value does is turn it into its opposite. So between t equals to 2 and t equals to 4, this absolute value will turn this portion of v of t into negative v of t, so that it looks something like this. There we go. And so hopefully it's clear, this portion of the curve is exactly the same as v of t, and I'll label that, that's v of t, and perhaps I'll use a different color. This portion of the curve, there we go, between t equals to 2 and t equals to 4, well, that's the curve negative v of t, or the opposite of v of t. And that's exactly what the absolute value does. Anytime the curve is underneath the horizontal axis, it reflects it across it to turn it into its opposite, like I've drawn here. And now that I've done that, hopefully it's clear that as we integrate from 1 to 3, we'll be calculating the area enclosed by the curve and the horizontal axis, which I'm hatching right now in green. Both of these areas are now positive areas, and therefore no longer cancel each other out. And so the result we'll end up with from our integral will therefore be equal to the distance traveled between t equals to 1 and t equals to 3 seconds. And so let's see that done with the integral. So I'll just go ahead and say distance, and I'll write distance right here. There we go. For t between 3 and 1. All right. Well, according to the formula that we have boxed in green here, that's going to equal to the definite integral from 1 to 3 of the absolute value of our velocity function. So that's the absolute value of pi times sine of pi over 2 times t. There we go. And now to get rid of this absolute value, because we don't want to be working with that, the idea now is to split this integral into 2 or more integrals when needs be, to clearly separate regions where the function inside the absolute value is above the horizontal axis and below the horizontal axis. And here, remember, we can see quite clearly that v of t crosses the t-axis when t equals to 2, beyond which it passes underneath the axis. And so t equals to 2 is exactly where we're going to split this integral. And here's the whole idea. We'll go ahead and state that this is equal to the definite integral from 1 to 2 of v of t, so pi times sine of pi over 2 times t, plus the definite integral from 2 to 3 of the opposite of v of t. So that's the portion of the curve I'm hovering over right now. So from 2 to 3 of the opposite of pi times sine of pi over 2 t. And now I can take these factors of pi and negative pi outside of both of these integrals to write that this distance is equal to pi times the integral from 1 to 2 of sine of pi over 2 t, and of course we have a dt at the end here, minus pi times the integral from 2 to 3 of sine of pi over 2 t. Okay, all we have to do now is evaluate each of these two integrals. And for that, I'll make myself a bit of space like so. And before diving into the evaluation of each of these, what I usually like to do is find the antiderivative I'll need for the integral. And so I'll do that in a different color up here. And in this case, I need the antiderivative of sine of pi over 2t. Well, let's see. I think I'll need even more space than that, so I'll move to the far right for the moment. That's equal to 1 over pi over 2 times negative cosine of pi over 2t, and with a plus c at the end there. Now, 1 over pi over 2 is the same thing as 2 over pi, so that's 2 over pi times negative cosine of pi over 2t plus c. In other words, this is equal to negative 2 over pi times cosine of pi over 2t plus c. Okay, so we now have the antiderivative we need, and remember, for these definite integrals, we can ignore this constant of integration. And so using this result, we can go to the next step. Indeed, we can now state that that's equal to pi times, in square brackets, negative 2 over pi times cosine of pi over 2 times t, with lower limit 1 and upper limit 2, minus pi times, in square brackets again, negative 2 over pi times cosine of pi over 2t, with lower limit 2 and upper limit 3. Next, taking this factor of negative 2 over pi outside of these two pairs of square brackets, this becomes pi times negative 2 over pi, which is negative 2, times cosine of pi over 2t in square brackets with lower limit 1, upper limit 2. And then we have minus pi times negative 2 over pi. So that's going to become plus 2 times, in square brackets, cosine of pi over 2t with lower limit 2 and upper limit 3. And now we're finally ready to plug the upper and lower limits inside this cosine function to write the following. This equals to negative 2 times, in square brackets, this equals to 2 times, in square brackets, cosine of pi over 2 times the upper limit 2, so that's pi over 2 times 2, which would just be pi, and in fact I'll erase that and just write, so that's cosine of pi, minus cosine of pi over 2 times 1, where I've replaced t by the lower limit 1. So that's cosine of pi over 2. Next, for the second pair of square brackets, we'll have 2 times cosine of pi over 2 times 3, since the upper limit is 3, so that's pi over 2 times 3, which is 3 pi over 2, so that's cosine of 3 pi over 2, minus cosine of pi over 2 times 2, that's the lower limit. So pi over 2 times 2 is just equal to pi, so that's cosine of pi. And now cosine of pi is equal to negative 1, so we'll have negative 1 here and here, and I'll quickly write that. That's equal to negative 1, and that's equal to negative 1. And both cosine of pi over 2 and cosine of 3 pi over 2 are equal to 0, so that's equal to 0, and so is that. We're nearly there. This is therefore equal to negative 2 times negative 1 minus 0, so that's just negative 1, plus 2 times, in square brackets, 0 minus negative 1. So that's 0 plus 1, so that's just 1. Finally, here we have negative 2 times negative 1, which is 2, plus 2 times 1, which is 2 as well. So this is 2 plus 2, which leads to the final answer, 4. So that's 4 meters. And that's the distance traveled by the particle between t equals to 1 and t equals to 3 seconds. And in fact, I'll go ahead and box that final answer. There we go. Now, as I'm sure you can appreciate, having to deal with this absolute value definitely adds a bit more work to our integration. So quite often in exam questions, these distance problems tend to be for calculator papers. So I would suggest making sure that you know how to use the absolute value on your calculator. That being said though, just to finish, we found that the distance traveled between t equals to 1 and 3 is 4 meters, and if we go back to the original sketch we had started off with, so that's the one you can see at the top of the screen here, right here, remember, between 1 and 2 seconds the particle had traveled 2 meters to the right to get from 3 to 5, and following that, between 2 and 3 seconds it traveled 2 meters to the left to get from 5 back to 3. And this simple sketch here further explains why our displacement integral would equal to 0, that's what we had written down here, and it confirms that the distance traveled we just calculated is indeed correct, since 2 meters plus 2 meters is of course 4 meters. Whereas for the displacement, this tells us that 2 meters to the right followed by 2 meters to the left mean that the particle finishes exactly where it started at 3 along this number line. So the relative displacement from 1 to 3 is of course equal to 0. And there we go. That's how we can calculate the distance traveled between two moments in time by integrating the absolute value of the velocity function. Now to finish, let me just mention that if ever we were asked to calculate the total distance traveled by this particle, say within the first 4 seconds, then again we'd use the same formula, and the only thing that would change would be the lower limit and the upper limit of the integral. Indeed, if we were considering this particle for the first 4 seconds, then the lower limit would have been 0 and the upper limit would have been 4. And in fact, why don't you try now? You should find that the total distance traveled in the first 4 seconds, well, that should be 8 meters. Since at time 0 the particle was at 1, it traveled 4 meters to the right, followed by 4 meters to the left. Indeed, that's what it does in the first 4 seconds. So the total distance should definitely be 8 meters. So some good practice would be to try and use this formula and repeat the steps I just did here with lower limit 0 and upper limit 4. Either way though, that's it for this video on kinematics and how to calculate the distance traveled by integrating the absolute value of the velocity function. And there we go. That's it for this tutorial.